first thing that struck me about it when I was walking past, and I'll try and catch it out on the light on the camera here, is just that side panel, the way it captures the light. And if we remove that bit of plastic from the front, or let's give that the moment it deserves. Oh, gotta love that stuff. Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about a particularly interesting NAS. I want to talk about a NAS that was at Computex. I want to talk about a NAS that genuinely made me rethink what I know about this industry. I of course want to talk about the Asustor NIMBUSTOR 4. Now, I know it goes by another name, the AS5304T, but because that's such a technical name, I'm not really going to talk about it much on the channel. We're going to focus primarily on that name, NIMBUSTOR. Now, this is the 4-bay device. This is the NIMBUSTOR 4. Now, this device, the reason it really shook me up when I first heard about it is, until now, I think I've got NAS pretty down pat. I know exactly what there is, what there isn't, what it can do, and often what it can't do. And now we're seeing a new change in the industry with regards to network access. A little while ago, that company Quantia started knocking out some incredibly affordable 10 GBE solutions. But on top of that, they started working on ways on us accessing things like 2.5 GBE and 5 GBE incredibly affordably. And in line with that, we're starting to see new kinds of technology out there. We're starting to see some of those great Celeron CPUs that until now were at the top end, coming down to a far more affordable level. And with all of that happening, a device like this has landed. This 4-bay arriving at an incredibly affordable price, not just for a 4-bay, but a 4-bay with this kind of hardware inside and out, is really breathtaking. And of course, we are focusing primarily on the hardware in this video, and we've got a software review coming straight after this because it's only arrived today. So much so, it even arrived with this dippy little sign inside. Thanks, spam. But when the unit first arrived with me, I knew I was going to look forward to doing this. I'm going to do a whole series of videos on this device and hopefully figure out for you as well as for me whether this is going to be another big move in the world of NAS. We've got so used to companies with Synology and QNAP dominating the top tier, with that elusive third place being fought over by a number of companies. This is an enormous step forward from this brand. Now, I've already sung its praises and really bigged it up. Let's hope it can deliver for you guys. This device here, this is the retail box that it arrives in. It's a 2-bay as well, the NIMBUSTOR 2, which has a different CPU, but in almost every other way it is the same, but we'll focus on that for a later video. Now, this device arrives with ADM, which is their own user interface system, graphical user interface that can be accessed via a web browser. There's client apps and mobile apps too. And on top of that, this device has got HDMI and more, but that's enough waffling. Let's have a look at this device. Retail packaging, very nice and clean there, all the way around, giving us loads of information. I know I talk about this a lot in my other videos, but I am going to mention it again here. I love that we still live in a world where these devices have pretty retail packaging, given that I'm willing to bet everyone watching this video who ends up buying this, affiliate links in the description, support the channel, anyone that ends up buying this is going to do it via an online source. Ergo, by the time you see the packaging, you've already got it. So I still love that they commit to this retail packaging, because I'm a 90s kind of a guy. When PC games came in boxes or like this big and they just had a bunch of discs inside. But let's get this opened up on the side, lovely little black panel there. And we'll talk more about the internal hardware later in the video. But we've got a lovely little thank you on the top, I quite like that. Inside we have got the box of accessories, and with this device we receive, open this up, we have a 90-watt external PSU, and again, external PSUs, I know they divide opinion for a number of you, but for me, I love external PSUs because in my lifetime I've lost 2 or 3 PSUs on different kinds of devices, and on 2 out of 3 of those occasions they've been internal PSUs, and it has been a nightmare to get them replaced, repaired or more. External PSUs, you can just send off the PSU, get another one, or you can even get, store-bought ones, but I don't really recommend that. But nevertheless, again, external PSUs for me win, particularly in a desktop form. Don't get me wrong, they can get knocked out, but then can't any mains power cable really when you think about it. On top of that, we've got screws for 2.5-inch drives, because it has to be said this device does support 3.5-inch and 2.5-inch hard drive and SSD media, SATA based, but although the trays are click and load, so no screwdriver required for those bigger hard drives, such as, get ready for the plug, the Seagate Ironwolf, the 14 TB drive from them. This is the one with the Ironwolf Health Management and Recovery Service in the Pro drives. These drives do not require screwdrivers to install these. In fact, even at this large threshold that the enterprise drives arrive with, all those platters and enterprise level chassis, the Asustor NIMBUSTOR 4, which I am going to get sick of saying, does support these drives in the click and load capacity, both on a software level and internally. So 4 of those inside. In fact, the device that can run with just one drive if need be. Wouldn't recommend it though. The screws are for SSD based media. So that's when you want to install SSDs as your primary form of storage, or if you want to use it for SSD caching, there is, get ready for another plug, but I do genuinely mean it with this one as well, the Seagate Ironwolf series of NAS SSDs. So you can bung those inside, you've got your SSD cache to keep you moving, or have an area of raw, super fast storage that the improved network ports on this that I'll talk about later on give you access to. But again, supporting 2.5 and 3.5 inch hard drives. Also inside, we have a quick start installation guide there in the middle, very small, all lovely English and pictorial. And if we move that there to the side, we have a couple of Cat5e cables. Now again, this is one of the few things that sort of push my nose out of joint at first. Not many, to be honest, with this device. From what I've seen so far, and I haven't got to the software part yet, it has impressed me. But Cat5e, I know it's going to be using a newer, faster 2.5 GBE network ports on the rear that I'll talk about later on. But come on, Cat 6, Cat 7 maybe? Let's think for the future, right? But even then, it's a very tiny complaint, because you probably wouldn't even get the kind of fidelity that you would want those cables to give you at this level. So again, it's kind of a negative complaint, more me than them. And of course, to remove the foam, we have the unit itself, which again is surprisingly small for a 4-bay device, I've got to say. I've had a lot of 4-bay devices on this channel from lots of brands, including Asustor's previous generation. And I've always been a fan of this new chassis design. First premiered on the AS50, those Realtek powered 10 GBE NASs from last year. This new chassis is surprisingly angular. When I first saw this device at Computex a month ago, the first thing that struck me about it when I was walking past, and I'll try and catch it out on the light on the camera here, is just that side panel, the way it captures the light. And if we remove that bit of plastic from the front, or let's give that the moment it deserves. Oh, gotta love that stuff. Even that front panel has got that angular design. It's incredibly flat, but I love that design element. It's very pretty. And again, that front panel is magnetic, so it just sticks there on the front. No hinge there to worry about, but again, I do love this chassis. I think I love what they've done with the outside design there and that slight angular feel, because again, you can't really tell by looking at it on some angles, but at a certain light, it does look the business. Now, before I continue talking about the unit, let's talk a little bit more about the internals and the software capabilities. First and foremost, this device arrives with an incredible CPU. It arrives with that Gemini Lake, which is the J4105. It's a quad-core Intel Celeron chip. Frequency should be on the screen. And this CPU is a game changer. Its embedded graphics component is exceptionally high. And on top of that, it supports DDR4 memory with 4 GB by default, officially supporting up to 8 GB, but I will be doing tests with larger capacities later. The system itself supports a number of the very latest software innovations from Asustor in their ADM software version 3.4. In fact, this device has its own gamer-themed upgrade, which we'll talk about more in the software video available with this series of devices. Now, if you are looking at something that you can edit files on the fly, this may well be the device for you. Don't get me wrong, it's not 10 GBE, but it is 2.5 GBE. Now, with 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, what you've got there is internet connections on the rear there, network connections, I should say, that are 2.5 times greater each than standard network protocol. Let me explain. At the moment, nearly all devices support RJ45 1GBE. So whether you are buying a NAS with just 1GBE ports, multiple 1 gigabit Ethernet ports, or 10 GBE or whatever, all of them will have at least one 1GBE port as standard. They'll combine it with others, but there'll be at least one, because 1GBE is considered the standard. It's on the back of your telly, your back of your PC, your back of your everything. It is the standard. But with file sizes getting so large and people demanding speeds ever increasingly, And with the fact that so many things we do are cloud-based, and I do mean the apps on your phone to the operations you do with it are cloud-based, the speed of data is now approaching a point where it may even be more important than the size of the data. Now, because of that, and with that in mind, lots of people have made that jump to 10 GBE. I've talked about it on the channel multiple times, but 10 GBE, is, even though it is considerably more affordable than it has been in the past, it's still not at that price point where it could be included in most of our day-to-day devices. And the result is that the last thing you want to do is buy the same piece of hardware you were going to buy before, but something like £100 to £120 more expensive because of that 10 GBE you may or may not use. So to somewhere meet in the middle, companies again like a Quantia and of course Asustor have worked on solutions that meet you in the middle. We are talking about USB to 2.5 GBE and 5 GBE adapters. We're talking about NASes like this that have done away with 1 gigabit Ethernet, so standard gigabit networks, and made the switch to 2.5 as standard. In fact, this device has two 2.5 GBE ports which can be link aggregated to 5 gigabit Ethernet, and at the same time manages to maintain a price point that is not only competitive with 1 GBE NASes such as the DS918 Plus, the TS453B and more, but does it with an incredible amount of hardware inside and 2.5 GBE and still comes out cheaper. That's why this is so interesting. They've really kind of invested and gone all in with devices like this, because what they've done is move onto that new 2.5 gigabit Ethernet network standard without increasing the price of all the other devices. They've maintained the price, but increased the speed and bandwidth opportunities to you. And that's very, very, very important. Now with that, ADM also supports everything you want in a modern NAS, everything from BTRFS file systems with file self-healing, background integrity checks and faster snapshots, to a whole host of applications available from ADM. They've got their surveillance app with this device supporting 35 to 40 IP cameras. You've got HDMI out with its own dedicated Asustor portal application that lets you have a complete user interface via HDMI on a monitor that's supported, and with that HDMI port and Asustor portal you are able to access loads and loads of applications, first and third party, everything from Kodi unofficially, Plex, LibreOffice for office applications, other third party applications from YouTube to Amazon Instant. All of these apps, whether they third party or homebrew from the community forums, are all accessible over HDMI. You've also got VirtualBox, the VM software that lets you support Windows VMs, Android VMs, Linux VMs and Mac VMs, which again, temperamental as hell, but at least you've got that on a NAS right now. So this device supporting features and functionality like that is a big, big deal. Moreover from that, you've also got HDMI 2.0A on the rear, so you are talking 4K 60 frames per second. And if your visual device is true 4K, then having media via an HDMI enabled NAS that doesn't come via a true HDMI socket like HDMI 2.0A means that you're going to be losing out. This device does not let you lose out. Now, with that, there's obviously business class applications such as switch control, AES level encryption with a hardware encryption inside. On top of that, you've got all of those storage management tools that you want, not just RAID. We are talking USB backups, we are talking network backups, rsync and more. We're talking third-party cloud backups, all of those features and functionality you want. What I'm saying is you aren't losing out. People seem to think that Asustor NAS is a compromise, and it really isn't in this case. But let's completely reserve judgment there for when we do the software overview, because right now the hardware is really winning me over, and I really, really hope that the software is going to be just as good. And of course we will compare it against DSM and QTS and stuff like that. Now, the device itself, let's take a good long look at it. The front panel there, obviously removable, we've looked at already. If we bring that closer to the camera, we can see here this section of LEDs to know everything from drive access, system access, network access, and general traffic within this device, with dedicated LEDs for each of the 2.5 GBE ports on the rear. We've also got USB 3 on the front, so that's 5 gigabit USB there. Just knock it out. I'm not going to go through all those different variations of USB for you, but there's also a one-touch copy button, which to me is a big, big deal, because USB copies for me, people seem to think, oh no, that you can have it automated and plug the USB and the software will do it itself. That's true, but what I want is a button that I can press to know that it is actioned. I want to press it, see the LEDs go nuts, back up the important files to my USB, and when it's done, it safely ejects itself, and you will see all of those indicators from the front. To me, that's important. I know to a lot of techies out there, a USB copy button is important, and I'm glad it's on there. If we remove the magnetic front panel, again, kind of mesh hive there on the back, we can see those 4 bays of storage. So let's take a look at one of these bays. Pop that there on the table. The trays themselves are plastic in design, and again, they're click and load, so the side panels come off. You put your drive inside, you line up the holes and pop the clip back on. And again, there are holes at the base of the device for those 2.5-inch drives, which will require a screwdriver and those screws that you saw earlier. But just to put it into perspective and to prove it, there is that Seagate Iron Wolf drive we were talking about earlier on. Let's pop that there. How easy is it to install this drive? There you go, the drive is installed, it's not going anywhere. Slide it in there. Put it in. It was my fault for sliding it in there wrong. Got a bit exuberant, and boom, you're in. So that's now a one bay is now populated with the drive. Still pretty light, still pretty menacing looking there on the front. And in fact, if we do remove all 4 of those trays there, get that out of there, there. Remove that other drive, we can see exactly how we go about replacing the memory, because this device arrives with 4 gig of DDR4 memory, but inside we have got that memory bay. There's 2 slots, I don't know how well you can see that through there, and this allows us to upgrade the memory to 8 gig officially, but of course you can upgrade even further. Perhaps we are going to do a 16 gig test later on. Shh, tell no one. Inside we've got all the hardware inside there, along with a, I don't know how well you can see that there if I angle that on camera. We've got a large heatsink there inside where our CPU, again that Gemini Lake CPU, is kept, and of course the memory straight there next to it. On the bottom of the device we've got lots of cooling there, we've got the rubberized feet as well as air there that works with the active airflow fan on the rear, pushing air through the drives and out the bottom, as well as that front panel being raised to make sure that there is ventilation all the way around. If we go to the rear of this device, we can take a look at our ports and connections. Now, at the top, we've got 2 more USB ports, which again, on a device like this, is more than just basic storage. With this device, we are looking at utilizing, standard USB flash disks, sure, and, UPS is connected in there, but you've also got wireless dongles, you've also got USB network dongles, you've got Bluetooth dongles, you've got DVR, digital transmitter connections that can be connected via USB and supported by the apps. You can connect a control pad and run this as an arcade server. There are multiple gaming and retro gaming and current gaming emulators in the software available in the App Store completely for free. On top of that, you can connect standard keyboard and mouse, then access an HDMI monitor, and then you've got a standalone PC thanks to that virtual box that can be run via HDMI. Going to that HDMI port, we've got that there, it's just a 1 port, but once again, HDMI 2.0A and 60 frames per second means that we are getting a very, very proficiently powerful box. And here is where the business is. This is those 2.5 GBE ports, which once again can be link aggregated. So port trunking, link aggregation means either one of those 2 concepts I hope you're aware of. What that means is you can effectively double the transmission between this and the switch it's connected to. And you have to make sure your switch is a smart switch that supports link aggregation, or you've got a 10 GBE switch which you can connect to this device via copper RJ45, and then with that you're getting the full 2.5 GBE bandwidth, which again with link aggregation, great speeds. Otherwise you can always utilize load balancing, which is the kind of 2-lane approach to data. But nevertheless, it's features and functionality like this that make this device very, very interesting. And once again, I hope the price point has been on the screen during this, because again, a device that costs these sort of pricing, it should have the dollars, the euros and the pounds there, is a big deal, because what you're getting for your money is surprisingly a lot compared with what every other NAS brand is putting out there right now. And of course, you've got that rear mounted fan, which is semi-autonomous. which means that you can either adjust the RPM up and down accordingly as you need it, or, as I would recommend, let the system do it itself. But I'm going to wrap things up a little bit now and move over to the software video just after this, get some drives installed and see exactly what ADM gives you on this. But right now, even if that software doesn't come up to par, which I think it will from what I tested at Computex, I would say that even in the third-party app department with things like Plex, with virtual machine use, container use, and simple file management mean, thanks to BTRFS, for long-term backups and more, this is a damn fine 4-bay NAS. And whether you are going to use the 2.5 GBE ports or not, which is incredibly important in my opinion, even if you don't use them and you use those ports as standard, boring 1 GBE, you're still getting more NAS than what most other NAS brands have got out right now in 4-bay desktop form at this price point. And to me, that's what makes this so damn interesting. But stay tuned for the software review coming very, very soon indeed. Otherwise, do check out the NAS Compare article in the description and do support this channel with your likes, your subscribes, and do visit the articles. Otherwise, cheerio, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the software vid shortly.